For hundreds of years, underground miners have reported seeing, hearing, and sensing the presence of knockers, or if you're in America, Tommyknockers, as they go about their work. Hi, I'm Kitty. Welcome to Fairy Encounters. There may be less humans working the mines underground these days, but make no mistake, this doesn't mean the knockers have gone away, or that they are no longer seen, heard, or sensed. Entering and exploring old mines and caves is a popular recreational activity. Many people are fascinated by witnessing firsthand the way their ancestors worked underground to mine Earth's valuable resources. Then there are other people who, inexplicably to me, just like going deep underground to explore and kind of hang out. You'll never find me down there, but by God, bless those that have the courage to do that. Which leads me to Bob, a long-term viewer and friend of the channel. And in this video, Bob shares his extraordinary experiences with Tommyknockers in the mines of Colorado. He has spent a lot of time underground and served as a guide on tours of old mines too. So buckle up, because here are just a few of his fantastic experiences with Tommyknockers. I worked for several years as a guide on an historic silver mine tour during its annual 100-day season, and I worked one off-season as a miner in a gold mine, and then the following summer was a tour guide there. I also spent several months working on a mine closing project, and this was all in Colorado in the 1990s. In my life, I've had many experiences with ghosts and the little people, and even a few entities that I don't know how to label, but these are my experiences with the Tommyknockers. Tommyknockers are entities who live underground, who can and do interact with humans who are also underground. Sometimes they are seen. Belief in them is widespread, and they're known by many names in many places. Calling them knockers or Tommyknockers comes from the miners in Cornwall and is the name generally used by hard rock miners in North America because of the many Cornish miners who worked here in the 1800s. One day at the gold mine, I was telling a tour group about the Tommyknockers, and a lady who was from the Czech Republic spoke up and said that they had such beings in her old country. She called them the Permanent. A week or so later at the silver mine, there was another lady from the Czech Republic on the tour, and when I got to the part about the Tommyknockers, I stopped and asked her if she knew about the Permanent. The question surprised her, but she admitted that she did. So I asked her to please tell the group about them. And this she did, and what she said was almost word for word what I normally told groups about the Tommyknockers. Like most of the little people, the Tommyknockers can be anything from friendly and helpful to malicious and vindictive. According to the law, they might knock on the rock or timbers to warn a miner of danger, and seriously, rock and timber noise can be a sign of danger. Or they might blow out his candle, back in the days when they worked by candlelight. There are stories of them leading lost miners to safety after they lost their lights, and even of them leading the miners to richer ore. But on the other hand, they might also put out a miner's light maliciously, then dump his lunch, hide his tools, trip him over, or drop the tools down a shaft. Because of this, many miners had a habit of leaving a bit of food or tobacco out for them, and some mines even had carved images of Tommyknockers at the portals for the miners to touch for good luck going in or in thanks when coming out safely. Such heathen practices were undoubtedly preached against on Sunday morning, but then again, the preacher wasn't the one going underground into the Tommyknockers territory the other 6 days of the week. Well, when I first started working at the Silver Mine tour, I wasn't sure about the Tommyknockers and so didn't bother bringing them up. Then one day, before I started working at the gold mine, I was visiting the gold mine and the owner there offered me a chance to go down into the older parts of the mine, far below the level where visitors normally were allowed. So with a borrowed helmet and lamp, I descended an old wooden ladder down the shaft into the old workings. Various levels 100 feet apart and dating back to the 1800s. I was completely alone and the only light was the one that I had on my helmet. It was strange, so quiet and hushed, but I wasn't alone. I could feel someone with me, just sort of showing me around. It wasn't scary at all. It was a warm feeling. I explored the lower reaches of the mine, then eventually climbed back up to the main level and back into daylight. After that, I started noticing things like movement in the corners and sounds when I was underground. I read whatever I could find about the Tommyknockers and then I started telling visitors about them. Perhaps because I was friendly and respectful, I had few problems with them, although that was not the case with some others of the little people, but that's another story. And granted, most of the visitors didn't consider the Tommyknockers as much more than an amusing piece of mining folklore, but with most groups, there was usually someone, often a child, who was quite interested. On one tour, there was a Lakota from Canada who was quiet during the whole tour, but who got quite interested when I started talking about the Tommyknockers. He listened intently, then nudged the person with him and said, "He's talking about the little people." I spoke with him for a while after the tour, and he shared some beliefs of the little people which were very similar to the Tommyknockers, which was such an interesting connection. Unfortunately, there were also those, usually adolescent males, who would interrupt me to scoff when I spoke about the Tommyknockers. I was willing to overlook their rudeness, but the Tommyknockers weren't. Mocking the Tommyknockers when you're underground is very foolish. When it happened on my tour, someone would always get hurt. And it was never the rude scoffer themselves, but rather the adult who was with them. And it would be minor things like bumping one's head or tripping and falling or scraping one's hand on the rock. But it happened every single time. I have no idea why the escorting adult was targeted rather than the young scoffer, but that is what happened. I decided to take action on this. So one day I went back into the mine by myself and respectfully told the Tommyknockers that the scoffers were young and stupid and ignorant, but hurting people was not acceptable. I knew I couldn't force the Tommyknockers to behave, but I pointed out that I was their friend and asked, was I not always respectful? I told them that I could stop telling people about them, and that is what I was going to do if the retaliations didn't end. Apparently, they enjoyed being talked about because there were no more retaliations, at least not on my tours. Actually, it seemed that at least some of the Tommyknockers enjoyed interacting with the tours. Quite often, when the tales were being told, when the knocking on rocks was mentioned, there would be a knocking on the rocks with uncannily perfect timing from the closed part of the mine. One day, when I was taking a break, another guide came up to me after his tour and told me that I had caused quite a sensation during his tour. I asked him what he was talking about, and he replied, "All those Tommyknocker noises." Well, I assured him that I hadn't set foot in the mine during that tour, and all the other guides had been busy with their own groups. One day I had a new employee going on my tour with me to see how it was done. When I mentioned how the Tommyknockers would knock on the rocks, there followed a definite sound of knocking, which got quite a reaction from the visitors. Well, afterwards, the new employee asked me, "Hey, where's the button?" Puzzled, I said, "What button?" "The button you push to make the Tommyknocker noises," she said. I said, "No, my dear, there is no such button." Part of the Tommyknocker folklore, which I was sceptical about, were the reports about Tommyknockers celebrating Christmas. I was aware that the little people reportedly like celebrations, but I considered that celebrating Yule was much more likely for the Tommyknockers than Christmas would be. Well, be that as it may, I walked up through the snow to the mine one cold December night and I let myself in. I didn't turn on the electric mains, but I used a personal light to go several hundred feet into the mine, and there I sat down on a bench in a well-timbered area that we call the lunchroom. I lit a candle and switched off my light and just waited. After a bit, I asked if the Tommyknockers were there, and immediately, right in front of me, there was the sharp sound of two rocks knocking together, even though no loose, moving rocks were there in the lunchroom. I asked if that was the Tommyknockers, and once again there was an immediate clashing together of two unseen rocks. Well, that was good enough for me. I had hoped to sing for them. I have Welsh ancestry on my mother's side, as I'd been told that the good people enjoy music, but I had a really sore throat, so I decided to whistle instead. So there I sat, I whistled every holiday tune that I knew. After a while, even that began irritating my throat, and I knew that I was going to have to stop soon. So I wished them a happy holiday, turned my light back on, and blew out the candle. As I walked along the adit, heading back to the portal, I resumed whistling, and then I heard someone began whistling along with me. Isn't that wonderful? Just the most beautiful interaction. I'd like to send warm thanks to Bob for sharing his experiences with us. It's extraordinary that Bob and any other miners should be on the receiving end of kindness or some measure of friendship or connection from these folk. I mean, any human who ventures all the way down there is well out of their natural habitat. It's not our place to be down there. It's their home, and we are only there and safe as far as their good grace allows it. If you like my videos, please let YouTube know by becoming a member of the channel or subscribing and liking my videos. This will get YouTube's attention. They'll think, oh, people like these stories and these videos, and they'll show my channel to more viewers, and this will really help me grow. Thank you so much, lovelies. Until next time, stay curious. Cheerio!